The DNA backlog at the Western Cape Police Laboratory continues to be a concern. While some inroads have been made, there are still many samples that aren't being processed. This has a direct impact on court cases. For more on this, eNCA reporter Monique Mortlock joins me now from Cape Town. Monique, very good morning to you. Good to see you. I mean, this problem with DNA, the backlog in DNA, has been such an issue for so long. We had the Police Minister Begitsele a few months back saying this will be resolved in 6 months, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen, does it?
Yes, I'm outside of the National Prosecuting Authority's office as well. I'll be speaking to NPA spokesperson Eric Ntabazalila in a minute. The Community Safety MEC, Regan Allen, has stated that it seems the SAPS is making inroads in tackling that massive DNA backlog here in the Western Cape. For example, between September and December 2021, the processing of DNA samples, it went from 89,000 to about 62,000. And although this is progress for provincial government, this is still too slow, as we still see many cases either being delayed due to DNA samples being outstanding or simply thrown out of the courts, struck off the court roll. And earlier this morning, when we were speaking to Western Cape Community Policing Forum's Francina Lucas, she mentioned it's not only the DNA backlog, but also policing resources and the under-resourcing of police stations. For example, where you have detectives who are dealing with a docket load, one detective dealing with a docket load of about 250 cases. So this all has a domino effect on what happens in our courts. But to give us more insight, I have with me, as I mentioned, Ms. Ntabazalila from the NPA. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thanks for the opportunity.
From the NPA side, what are the biggest challenges? We've now heard from the CPF side, but what are you seeing happening in the courts?
Look, one can look, there are systematic and human factors that lead to matters being delayed and at times leading to provisional withdrawals or being struck off the roll. Those are human factors, then there are systemic factors. The human factors would be where the complainant is not available in court, the witnesses are not available, the counsel is double booked or is sick, or the prosecutor is either engaged in another matter or is off sick. And then you get systematic issues which may lead to delays, whereby you got issues like load shedding, which we're experiencing lately, COVID-19, DNA delays, courts not being available, machines breaking down in court, and then interpreters and all the other personnel. But what we've done, as not only as the NPA, but as a cluster, as people working in the courts, we've tried to come up with mitigating factors. You will remember during the COVID-19, when it was serious, there were cases that had to be postponed outside court on the pavement, which shows that there was a creativity on the side of the parties, including the magistrates as well as the prosecutors, to ensure that at least there is justice in terms of people having to know or being there and told that you must come on such and such a date because there's these other challenges. And we've also noticed that, in fact, not noticed now, there were systems that were put in place in dealing with the issue of DNA, whereby DNA a system was put in place at national level, whereby DNA had to be prioritized for certain cases. As we're speaking now, in May 2022, there are 465 cases, results of DNA that have been, for the Western Cape alone, that went through that process of prioritizing to ensure that we try and work out the backlog, so which is a good news. But those are some of the challenges that we face, and one can say is happy that all the parties always come to the party to ensure that the justice system is working and that victims of crime do not get secondary victimization because of the delays. But there are situations where you find that issues are beyond our control, like issues when machines break down or people are sick. So we also try and prioritize cases when they come back on the road.
Just lastly, you spoke about those 465 cases that were prioritized. Are those your more serious cases, like your rapes, your murders? Are those the type of cases that get prioritized in terms of ensuring that the DNA sampling gets to the courts or gets processed?
Yes, those are prioritized cases. As like I said, it's a process that was started even during the COVID time, where we work with the parties nationally, where the results of the DNAs are sent to TPP offices around the country to ensure that there is a movement for people's cases to be on the road.
And lastly, do you think that these processes are happening fast enough, especially when you talk about, I'm so happy you mentioned it, that secondary trauma to victims, especially victims of GBV, who see how long matters take in court to actually get to a head, to actually come to a sentencing or even judgment. Do you feel that it's happening fast enough, or are we still lagging a bit behind?
Look, we have people who are trying their level best. I've worked with them for more than 10 years, I can assure you. We're working with people who are doing their level best. They understand the pain of the victims, and they took an oath to ensure that there is justice for victims of crime. I know on my side and on our side, we may think that and wish that it works faster. But the challenge is when you are a victim of crime, you want things to move as fast as possible. But rest assured, we're trying our level best to ensure that things are happening as fast as possible. We have in the past, I'm sure you are familiar with cases, where we've managed to get cases back on the roll at a fastest pace. And some of those instances which assist is when an accused person pleads guilty to a crime he or she has committed, so which makes things to run smoother and faster. And also one needs to appreciate that at times you'll find there are different parties in a particular case, which impacts on the movement of the case. And especially where there are multiple accused, and then you get an accused who want to say, I'll leave everything to the state to prove, which means at times some cases get more and more complicated than we wish for.
Thank you very much. That was the National Prosecuting Authority's eNCA here in the Western Cape, highlighting the fact that there have been measures put in place to help speed up, especially processes of DNA processing, especially those cases, those serious cases of rape and murder. He mentions here in May alone 465 cases where the DPP got involved just to ensure that speeding up of DNA processing, to ensure that justice is served to those victims, and a minimization of that secondary trauma that Ms. Nthabazalila mentioned.
Monique Mortlock, thank you so much. So there still is a backlog, but something is being done. That's what we're learning from Monique there. Now,